Does God exist? Or is the material universe all that is, or ever was, or ever will be?
I wouldn't say that there are only two options. It's not there is a God or the universe is eternal. That would be a false dichotomy fallacy, as there could easily be more options than that, such as our universe came into being through natural processes we don't yet understand.
One approach to answering this question is the cosmological argument.
And it's an argument commonly used by religious people all over the world, so we thought it could use some debunking. I'm R.
And I'm Jay.
Let's get started.
It goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Is the first premise true? Let's consider. Believing that something can pop into existence without a cause is more of a stretch than believing in magic. At least with magic, you've got a hat and a magician.
Ugh. Notice something about that example. A rabbit exists within the universe, whereas the universe doesn't exist within itself. This is a false equivalence fallacy. Cause and effect is a law of the universe. That doesn't mean it applies to the universe as a whole. Look at this image. The universe is A. We can conclude cause and effect exist inside of A. So if the question is regarding something happening inside of A, then assuming cause and effect is fair. Now look at B. We don't know if cause and effect applied there or even if it exists. Laws internal to the universe don't necessarily apply to the universe as a whole. You would have to prove that. We just don't know as we can't observe it.
And if something can come into being from nothing, then why don't we see this happening all the time?
Because we live inside the universe, not outside of it looking in.
No. Everyday experience and scientific evidence confirm our first premise.
They only confirm your first premise in regards to things taking place inside the universe. We have no experience or scientific evidence regarding the outside of the universe and what laws apply to the universe as a whole, because we just can't observe it with current technology and may never be able to observe it.
If something begins to exist, it must have a cause.
Inside of the universe, perhaps, but that doesn't mean you can apply it to the universe as a whole. Come on, surely you can understand that. Okay, so now the first premise is broken, the entire argument falls apart. But just for fun, let's take a look at the rest of the argument.
But what about our second premise? Did the universe begin, or has it always existed? Atheists have typically said that the universe has been here forever.
What do you mean by typically? Because for the past decade at least, the majority of atheists would probably accept the universe began to exist in its current form via the Big Bang. One of the common points usually made is that the time did not exist prior to the universe existing in its current form, as time is a property of our current universe, so the concept of time before the universe literally makes no sense, as time as we know it only began following the Big Bang.
The universe is just there, and that's all.
That seems like a quote mine. That quote was far too vague to assert Bertrand Russell was claiming the universe was eternal. He very well may have thought that, I don't know, but either way that quote doesn't prove anything. It just shows he thinks that the universe is all that exists. It doesn't mean that it was eternal.
First, let's consider the second law of thermodynamics. It tells us the universe is slowly running out of usable energy. And that's the point.
The second law of thermodynamics is probably one of the most commonly misrepresented laws by theists, so I'll be watching where you go with this very carefully.
If the universe had been here forever, it would have run out of usable energy by now. The second law points us to a universe that has a definite beginning.
That actually wasn't that bad. Have a cookie.
This is further confirmed by a series of remarkable scientific discoveries. In 1915, Albert Einstein presented his general theory of relativity. This allowed us, for the first time, to talk meaningfully about the past history of the universe. Next, Alexander Friedmann and George Lemaitre, each working with Einstein's equations, predicted that the universe is expanding. Then in 1929, Edwin Hubble measured the red shift in light from distant galaxies. This empirical evidence confirmed not only that the universe is expanding, but that it sprang into being from a single point in the finite past. It was a monumental discovery, almost beyond comprehension.
That wasn't too bad. You can have a second cookie. But it is worth noting, we can assert the universe in its current form began to exist, but we don't know anything about the singularity it came from. For example, anything outside of the current universe would no longer be guaranteed to have time applying to it, so the singularity may not be eternal or finite, given it wouldn't have to be pinned to the concept of time.
However, not everyone is fond of a finite universe, so it wasn't long before alternative models popped into existence. But one by one, these models failed to stand the test of time.
It's interesting that you point out how these theories have not held up against scientific scrutiny, when that same standard of scrutiny also rejects the Kalam Cosmological argument.
More recently, 3 leading cosmologists, Arvin Bord, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin, proved that any universe which has on average been expanding throughout its history cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. This even applies to the multiverse, if there is such a thing. This means that scientists can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning.
Well, that really depends on what you define as the beginning. We can safely say from your argument that the universe as we know it, that is one with the current laws of physics expanding from a central point, must have had a beginning. This, however, doesn't allow us to say anything about the universe before it began to expand. Hence, the beginning of time and the universe as we know it are the limits of our current understanding. We can't make assertions about anything outside of this.
Any adequate model must have a beginning, just like the standard model. It's quite plausible then that both premises of the argument are true.
Premise 1 is deeply flawed and terrible, hence this argument falls apart immediately and I'll be taking back those cookies we gave you earlier. Whereas premise 2 kind of works so long as it only applies to the universe in its current form, though it isn't beyond the realm of possibility that the universe previously had multiple forms.
This means that the conclusion is also true. The universe has a cause.
No, because cause and effect is a property internal to the universe, so you can't know it applies to the universe as a whole. But even if it is true, that doesn't prove a supernatural agent is responsible. A cause could literally mean anything, especially when we can't know anything about the properties of area labeled B.
And since the universe can't cause itself, its cause must be beyond the space-time universe.
So now we are discussing the section labeled B. I would assert we can't know anything about it with current technology, so the default position has to be, I don't know. I'm going to guess you disagree.
It must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, and unimaginably powerful.
Prove it. The properties of B could have time, B could exist within C, and it could just go on infinitely, because that could be acceptable within that plane of existence. I'm not saying it does, but I am saying you can't assert anything about it without first making observations.
Much like God.
What? I have so many problems with this reasoning, but I'll give you a chance to clarify it.
The cosmological argument shows that, in fact, it is quite reasonable to believe that God does exist.
Okay, so you don't clarify it at all, you just float it there like a turd on the current. Okay, cool, it fits a definition you made, so what? Consider this, you look at a boulder on top of a mountain and ask me where it came from. I say, bloop did it. You ask me to prove it, and I say bloop is defined as an immaterial force that moves boulders up mountains. The boulder is up there, hence it fits the definition of bloop, and now it is reasonable to believe bloop exists. Would you accept it? No, because it isn't sufficient evidence to prove something exists. Anyone can just make up definitions for things to fit reality. That doesn't mean it is reasonable to believe they exist because of that. It amazes me that this argument is so common given the huge flaws in its reasoning. But that's enough of that, I think. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for weekly videos, like this video, and share it around to help us raise the bar of public discourse.